Hello, chess lovers. Welcome to a clash of tactical brilliance and structural warfare from the golden age of chess. Today, we dive into the 1962 Varna Olympiad held on the beautiful Black Sea coast of Bulgaria. This is final stage matchup features the legendary magician of Riga, Mikhail Tal, the 8th world champion, renowned for his breathtaking intuitive sacrifices and a terrifying attacking style. Across the board sits Hans-Joachim, one of West Germany's sturdiest masters, known for his deep positional understanding and resilient defensive techniques. At this point in history, Tal was rebounding from health issues but remained a lethal force of nature. In this game, Joachim dares to enter a sharp modern line, tempting the magician to complicate the position. What follows is a masterclass in dynamic compensation featuring an extraordinary queen sacrifice that completely paralyzes Black's coordination. So now let's look at the board and analyze this masterpiece move by move. d4 and knight to f6. Standard development. Black prevents a rapid e4. Now c4 and e6, preparing to open lines for the dark squared bishop and to strike in the center. Now knight to f3 and b6. The queen's end in defense. Joachim aims to control the critical e4 square from the flank. Now knight to c3, the Kasparov variation, and bishop to b4. A hybrid approach, mixing Queen's Indian ideas with Nimzo-Indian pressure on the c3 knight. Now it's Nimzo-Indian 3 knights Duchamp variation on the board. Now bishop to g5 and bishop to b7. Pin and counter pin. Tal pins the f6 knight while Joachim maintains his grip on e4. Now e3 and h6, attacking the bishop. Joachim immediately put the question to Tal's dark squared bishop. Now bishop to h4. Bishop takes a c3 with a check. Now b takes a c3. Black inflicts structural damage. White's c-pawns are now doubled, which gives black a long-term target, but the white gains bishop pair. Now d6. A solid positional choice, blunting the long diagonal and preparing to anchor the center with e5. Now knight to d2 and e5. Joachim strikes at the center, locking down the dark squares. Tal's f3 knight shifts to d2 to make room for the f-pawn to advance. Now f3 and queen to e7. Black prepares positional queenside castling and eyes the e file. Now e4 and knight b to d7. Both sides have completed their basic central setups. White has space and the bishop pair. Black has a rock-solid undamaged pawn structure. Now bishop to d3 and knight to f8. A brilliant maneuver by Joachim. The knight is added to either g6 or e6 to challenge White's proud dark squared bishop. And now comes c5. The brilliant move, typical Tal. He does not wait to be slowly squeezed. He sacrifices a pawn to break open lines, activate his bishops and shatter Black's central coordination. Now d takes c5, d takes e5 and queen takes e5. Black queen is now centralized, but she comes a target for White's developing pieces. Now queen to a4 check. And now c6. Joachim blocks the check, but his queenside structure is now loosened and his king remains stuck in the center. And now Tal goes for castling on the king side. Knight to g6, attacking the bishop on h4. Missed opportunity. Joachim underestimates the impending storm. Grabbing the pawn with the queen to c3 was highly risky but critical. Instead, he plays to kick the bishop, missing a tactical thunderbolt. Now knight to c4, attacking the queen on a5. Now queen goes to e6. The queen must retreat. White's knight is beautifully posted on c4, eyeing the d6 and b6 weaknesses. And now comes e5, blasting open the center. Tal invites Joachim to win a piece, but it's a terrifying trap. Now b5. Joachim thinks he has a tactical fork, attacking both the white queen on a4 and the knight on c4. It seems black is winning material, but now e takes f6. Incredible queen sacrifice by Tal, the hallmark of the magician from Riga. Tal ignores the threat to his queen and crashes through the king side. Now b takes a4. Joachim must accept. The queen is off the board, but black's king is caught in a deadly crossfire. Now f takes g7, attacking the rook. Now rook comes to g8. The pawn on g7 is a pawn in black's throat, completely paralyzing the h8 rook. Now bishop to f5, attacking the queen. Brilliant deflection. If black takes the bishop with queen takes f5, then knight to d6, forks the king and queen, winning everything back with a crushing endgame. And if queen takes c4, rook a to e1 check and queen to e6. Rook takes e6 with a check and f takes e6 and bishop to g6 check. Now king to d7 and rook d1 check. Now king goes c8, bishop to f6, bishop a6, bishop to f7, rook takes d7 and bishop takes g7 and bishop to c4. So after bishop to f5, Joachim plays knight takes h4. Joachim wisely gives black some material to diffuse the immediate checkmate threats. Now bishop takes e6, bishop to a6. A very clever resource by Joachim, pinning the c4 knight to try and survive the onslaught. Now knight to d6 check, king to e7, a wild king hunt in the middle of the board. Now bishop to c4, attacking the bishop. And now rook takes g7. Joachim captures on g7, hoping to liquidate into a playable endgame. Now g3, attacking the knight on h4, a crucial intermediate move. Tal eliminates any counterplay against his own king before cleaning up the board. Now king takes d6, bishop takes a6 and knight to f5, preparing for e3. The smoke has cleared. Let's count the material. White has 2 rooks and a bishop against black's 2 rooks and a knight. White's bishop pair is gone, but black's pawns are shattered islands. Now rook a to b1. Tal takes control of the open b file, cutting off the black king. f6, rook f to d1 check. Now king goes e7. Now rook e1 check and king again goes to d6. Tal repeats once to gain time on the clock, a standard grandmaster practice. Now king to f2 and c4. Joachim tries to activate his passive pieces by giving back a weak pawn. Now g4, attacking the knight on f5. Knight goes to e7 and rook to b7. Rook a to g8. Black's rooks are completely tied down, defending the pinned knight on e7. Now bishop takes c4, attacking the rook. Now knight to d5. Now bishop takes d5. Here black cannot take the rook on b7 because white will then capture the rook on g8. So c takes d5. Tal simplifies us into winning double rook endgame. Black's isolated weak d pawns are defenseless. Now rook to b4, attacking the a4 pawn. Now rook to c8, attacking c3 pawn. Rook takes a4, rook takes c3, rook a6 check. Now king to c5. The black king plays aggressively, but his pawn structure is utterly ruined. Black's idea must be to promote the passed d pawn. Now rook takes f6 and h5. Now h3, h takes g4 and h take g4. Now rook to h7, preparing for ideas like rook to h2 and attack the pawn. Joachim tries to create counterplay on the h file, but Tal's passed g pawn is a monster. Now g5, rook to h5. Now rook to f5, rook to c2 check. Now king goes g3 and king to c4. Rook e to d5 and d4. Black's d pawn marches, but white's g pawn is faster. Now g6 and rook to h1. Now rook to c5 check. King to d3. Rook takes c2 and king takes c2. The final simplification. Now king to f4 and rook to g1. Rook to g5. So it was in this position on move 49 Joachim resigned the game. If the rooks are exchanged, the g-pawn promotes instantly. If the rook moves, the g-pawn simply marches to glory, a breathtaking aesthetic masterpiece by the magician. If your jaw dropped when Tal sacrificed his queen on move 19, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel so you will never miss another deep dive into chess history's greatest masterpieces. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.